The infrastructure of the EVEREST platform is distributed across 2 data centers in Europe. To deploy their applications, EVEREST users are able to create workflow definitions through the Lexis platform hosted at the IT4I data center in the Czech Republic. The Lexis platform can then start and orchestrate workflow executions with different parameters and/or input datasets for a specific workflow definition. Individual workflow elements can either run on the reference systems provided by the IT4I data center or be offloaded to the FPGA accelerated infrastructure hosted by IBM Research in Switzerland. A single node of the FPGA accelerated HPC cluster is based on a 2-socket AMD EPYC Milan system with a total of 96 physical cores. It houses 256 GB of DDR4 memory and runs Red Hat Enterprise Linux version 8 as an operating system. For acceleration, the system hosts 4 FPGA accelerator cards, 3 Alveo U55C and 1 U280. For connectivity, each node has a 100 gigabit per second Ethernet as well as a 100 gigabit per second low latency InfiniBand adapter. A total of 4 FPGA accelerated compute nodes are hosted at IBM. They are accompanied by a management and control host in the same subnet. The cluster can be reached from the public internet via a VPN network, which also enables access to other resources such as the Cloud FPGA platform. The FPGA Accelerated HPC cluster uses the simple Linux utility for resource management, or Slurm, to operate the cluster. EVEREST users, as well as the Lexis platform, can use the standard Slurm client commands to request resources and submit jobs to the cluster. As an example of a Lexis workflow, let's take a look at the WRF weather simulation workflow that is predefined in the Lexis platform. The demo workflow contains 3 main parts: download data, WRF execution, and upload results back. Observations, radar data, and WPS data outputs are uploaded from Lexis DDI to the IBM Alveo FPGA HPC cluster. Then the execution is submitted to the Slurm batch scheduler through the HIPI middleware. Finally, the output of the simulation is sent back to Lexis DDI together with optional metadata. Now let's see how we can execute an Lexis workflow on the IBM cluster. On the left-hand side, we have the browser open at the Lexis portal that shows us the various workflows for the EVEREST project. On the right-hand side, we have a terminal window that is connected to the IBM data center and the Slurm HPC cluster. We can inspect the cluster via the Slurm commands and see that we have 4 nodes available with 48 cores each. We also can inspect that currently there is no job running. On the shared partition amongst these nodes, there is a set of datasets available, and we will see when the workflow executes that new data is being transferred to the cluster at IBM. We want to run the WRF weather forecast workflow that is named WRF at IBM in the Lexis portal. We can inspect the workflow on the Lexis portal, and we can see the various executions that have been made already. We can launch a new workflow execution directly from the portal, or we can use the Basecamp SDK to start it. From the EVEREST Basecamp SDK, we can launch a Jupyter notebook and run the various commands to execute Lexus workflow. The Basecamp SDK leverages the Py4Lexus Python API to connect to the Lexus portal. We can select a specific workflow, in this case the EVEREST IBM WRF workflow that we've seen before at the portal itself, and start the flow. To authorize our API, we have to log in to the portal and allow access of the API to the portal. Basecamp will tell us that we have successfully logged into the Lexus session, and we can inspect the flow parameters that we have selected. We see that we are running a workflow, the WRF workflow at IBM, with a specific number of cores and MPI processes, and we can also select the input dataset that is supposed to be used. We can adjust these flow parameters, or we can stay with the defaults that we have set up here. Then we can execute the actual workflow and create a new execution. And inspect the result, and we'll see that the Lexus workflow execution is now in a queued state. We can subsequently check the state if it has been started or not. And by now it's in a running state. We can inspect the state as well in the Lexus portal. We should see a new flow execution that is now in a running state. If we inspect the progress of this workflow execution, we can see that the job transfer has been initiated, and we're waiting for the transfer from the IT4I data center to the IBM data center to be finished. This means we should see the data arriving at the shared partition amongst the nodes. So we can see number 28 is the execution number now, and the data is being transferred to the IBM data center. After a few minutes, we see that the transfer has ended and Lexus has submitted the job to the Slurm cluster and is now in a job wait state. So we should see the Slurm job now running on the HPC cluster at IBM. And we see here job ID 988 running at the Alveo partition. Now we can wait for a couple of hours for the job to finish, and then the results will be transferred back to IT4I and the workflow. After the simulation and the transfers have completed, we can inspect the status of the workflow execution back at the Lexus portal.